Number 10. Mockingbird. This wasn't a weird pairing because it was so much really bad or anything, it was just more weird because it was pretty random. Although these two had some fun moments, most fans felt that there just wasn't much staying power between them. Also, Spider-Man is a major jokester, and Mockingbird seemed to actively dislike laughing at Peter's jokes. She's pretty no nonsense. The nice thing is that Peter didn't have to worry about Bobby when it came to her being strong, independent, and being able to take on any baddies who might come her way because of her attachment to Spider-Man. In the end, however, everyone kind of felt the relationship was more of a placeholder, something for now but not for forever, as these two both had much more memorable and well-suited pairings when it came to the world of comics matchmaking. And there's also that weird thing of, they don't really have much in common besides their work, so there's that. Number 9. Mary Jane Watson. I know, how could Mary Jane make the list again, you might wonder. You're like, Amanda, really, Mary Jane? Which Spider-Man is she paired with now that's so weird, you wonder? Well, once again, I am not talking about her relationship with Peter Parker, although if we really wanted to explore some of their alternate relationships from alternate Earths and some specific moments in their relationship, there are a few times that even those two have been weird together. But no, this time around we are talking about Mary Jane Watson and Spider-Woman Jessica Drew. When did this happen? Where did this happen? In the Ultimate Universe of Earth 1610. The two weren't ever officially together, but Jessica definitely had feelings for MJ as she shared the memories, thoughts, and emotions even of Peter Parker, who she was a clone of. Yeah, in Ultimates, Jessica Drew has a different origin story, and like Ben or Kane are on Earth 616, she herself is also a clone of Peter, just a female clone, who was created by Dr. Kurt Connors and Dr. Otto Octavius for the CIA and FBI. The weird thing was less that Jessica was attracted to MJ, and more that she was attracted to her because of Peter's memories. None of her memories were her own, because that's how cloning works in this reality apparently. And before we move on to our next spot, just a quick reminder to give this video a thumbs up if you haven't already and if you're enjoying it. Because yeah, weird things deserve likes, I think. Number 8. Carlie Cooper. Carlie ended up basically hating Spider-Man after being in a relationship with him, which was pretty unfortunate considering that she was a fan favorite when it came to her relationship with Peter. Carlie was very patient with Peter initially and didn't even seem to mind when Peter would kinda zone out when they were together and not even notice when she left a gathering early, which is pretty awkward. She worked as a forensic specialist for the New York Police Department, so they seemed like a logical match. Both were brainy and involved in the fight for justice. However, when Peter Parker revealed that he was Spider-Man, Carlie found herself unable to continue their relationship, and the two broke up. However, Carlie would still be haunted by this revelation and secret, which she fought very hard to protect. It eventually caused her to move away from New York for a time after a traumatic event where she found herself exposed to the Goblin formula and transformed, being given the name Monster and recruited into the Goblin King's Goblin Army. Carlie was later cured, but this experience would definitely stay with her. Number 7. Eddie Brock and Liz Allen. A romance that never really amounted to anything other than Eddie trying to make a move on Liz, who pretty much just always rejects him. This attempt at a romance was made even weirder too when Venom revealed their jealousy of Liz, although I get it, they want Eddie all to themselves. Why bother with Liz when Eddie has a perfectly good romantic partner in Venom? The whole thing is pretty weird though, Venom feeling the need to compete with Liz for Eddie's attention, when really, who has more of Eddie's time than Venom himself? They basically have a monopoly on it. They spend most of their time bonded to the guy, but the whole exchange here is made even more strange by the fact that Liz doesn't really reciprocate Eddie's romantic interest to begin with. So there isn't that much even for Venom to be jealous of, other than I guess Eddie's wandering eye. Venom's like, Eddie, I see your eyes wandering and just look at me. Just look at your symbiote. Look at yourself in the mirror, basically. Number 6. Rogue. So this isn't main continuity Spider-Man or Rogue, but it's still a romantic moment that happened between the two characters, just on the Earth of 161. The two teamed up together in X-Men Forever 2. Rogue at the time had the guise of Nightcrawler, but still sports her very familiar brown and white hair. When Spider-Man encourages her to follow her heart, she warns him that she just might do that, sugar, and leans in to kiss him. I know what you're thinking, a kiss with Rogue could be deadly, but here Rogue was led to believe that she actually would be able to kiss Spider-Man without hurting him, so no worries there, don't panic. However, the romantic rooftop moment was then interrupted by Jean's telepathic shouts for Rogue's assistance. Those telepathic romance blocks, you know what I mean? Jean's like, help, Rogue's like, it's not a good time. Number 5. Scarlet Witch. This was a weird romance that involved Scarlet Witch kind of forgetting who she really was in order to fall for Victor. The two fell in love fast, though under false pretenses. And although at first we thought Dr. Doom was just trying to manipulate Wanda, he later insisted this was not the case and that he really loved her. And just as we thought maybe this could actually work out in some weird way, Doom then lashed out, seemingly implying he never loved Wanda, and in fact he thought she was weak and he had been using and manipulating her the whole time. Although it's more likely that Doom was actually just lashing out because he felt some shame, maybe he had a broken heart. He mistreated Wanda harshly, even when she still tried to help him despite his betrayal, and insisting that she was weak and that he had only been using her weakness against her to get her power. Needless to say, that was pretty much the end of their relationship. That great revelation, and the bizarre revelation where Doom claimed that apparently every bad thing Wanda has ever done was actually not of her own doing, but was caused by Doom himself. Wait, what? Number 4. Mary Jane Watson. Again. Another weird Spidey pairing with Mary Jane also comes to us from The Ultimates, because Spider-Man's clones all had his memories. They were just all basically into MJ. And not just Jessica. All the clones were meant to have their memories wiped so that they could develop their own identities and also be used in the process, but they escaped the facility where they were kept before this could happen. As a result, Kane, who also here sports an even creepier version of his half-melted face, ends up trapping Mary Jane and kidnapping her, claiming it's all out of love for her. Oh, if someone does that to you, you just need to get out of there. Seriously. Which is what MJ tries to do. She's like, no, let me out! Initially, she thinks that he's Peter from a silhouette, but then when she sees his face, she's horrified and knows something is definitely wrong, and this probably isn't her Peter Parker. Of course, she is right. Kane, out of love for MJ, wants to protect her by making her stronger. To do this, he exposes her to the Oz formula, which ends up turning her into a big red monster temporarily. I bet you thought I was going to say a big red dog, but no, that's Clifford. Fortunately, the real Peter Parker shows up and is able to use his presence to calm MJ down, transforming her back into a normal teenage girl. Well, normal. I mean, I feel like she just went through some stuff and she might transform again, but sort of normal. Mostly normal. Number 3. Eddie Brock and Ashley Kafka. This one comes to us not from the comics, but instead from the Spider-Man animated series out of the 90s. Here, Dr. Ashley Kafka was the person treating Eddie Brock during his time at Ravencroft Institute for the Criminally Insane. Eddie insisted that he was Venom, but Dr. Kafka believed that he was just delusional and that stress had basically caused him to lash out and to believe that he was the villain Venom, when he actually wasn't. This relationship was weird on the premise that it was a patient and doctor relationship turned romance, and the fact that both fell in love with one another while Ashley kinda thought Eddie was imagining being Venom and was at the time insane. So yeah. It got even weirder when Carnage got involved and caused a bunch of chaos that caused Eddie to save the day once reunited with the Venom symbiote. In the end, they were unable to be together as Venom got sucked into a magical portal in order to save Ashley. Don't you just hate it when a magical portal and multiple villains prevent you from being with the one you love? I know I do. Number 2. Mia Flores. One of the most random when it comes to Peter's interactions with women. Mia Flores kissed Peter while he was out with Carly Cooper, Harry Osborn, and Lily Hollister. Like, she just randomly grabbed him and then kissed him. She didn't even introduce herself first. She was just like, I'm gonna kiss you. I'm like, oh my goodness. Peter did not sign up for that. This was all part of a ploy for Mia to basically get in with Harry's entourage, wanting to get closer to him. But the weird part of the whole interaction was just how stalkery Mia was acting during this whole thing. It was like she was out to kill. She was like, Peter, I'm coming for you in this club. And Peter, rather than just confront Mia and be like, I'm really not into you and no thank you, decided to of course jump out a window instead. Because that's how Peter Parker likes to solve problems sometimes. This was less of a relationship and more a weird attempt at a romantic and sexy moment from Mia, but it's just really awkward and strange, and I felt it was so weird that I needed to include it, even though it's not a full relationship. Technically. Number 1. Jessica Carradine. Remember that time Ben Reilly pined after the daughter of the man who murdered Uncle Ben? No? Well, take a seat, cause yeah, that happened. Jessica Carradine is the daughter of Dennis Carradine, the name that would later be given to the man who killed Peter Parker's Uncle Ben. She grew up with a hatred of Spider-Man, believing that the hero was actually to blame for the death of both Ben and her father. She believed that her dad was basically framed by Spidey. Needless to say, she and Ben's relationship is catastrophically ruined when she realizes that he is Spider-Man. I don't even know why Ben would go for this if he was aware of Jessica's name and her ties to the man who murdered Uncle Ben, but hey, I guess it wasn't technically his uncle since he's just Peter's clone. One of Peter's clones. It should be noted that Jessica did eventually come to terms with the fact that her father was actually the guilty party, but she still couldn't be with Ben because she was then just too worried for his safety, since he often puts himself in various dangerous situations as Spidey. Number 10. Morgan Le Fay. Oddly enough, these two in a way seem almost perfectly suited for one another. Of course, this only means that their relationship is made even more weird. Doom and Morgan Le Fay became lovers over time, forming a relationship during a time when Morgan Le Fay was training and teaching Doom in the arts of magic. Doom enjoyed their lessons and I assume also enjoyed spending time with Morgan, but when she asked him for a gift from the future to prove his loyalty and his love, Doom refused, giving Morgan the excuse that doing so would, disrupt the timeline. Morgan didn't like this very much and set out traveling through time to the future in order to destroy Doom. Initially, she planned to kill Doom when he was young and vulnerable, but was not satisfied with the fact that Doom would kinda then not know the reason behind her wrath. In the end, her confrontation of Doom resulted in a battle with Norman Osborn's Dark Avengers, and while Morgan very much messed up that team, she was ultimately defeated by Doom during the fray. Not the most healthy of relationships, and strange that that's the least weird one. Just keep that in mind. That's number 10, that's the starting point. Number 9. Enchantress. I mean, it makes sense for Doom to be with magical ladies, but it's also pretty weird when you consider that Doom before has gone out of his way in the past to show how little he cares for Enchantress, and how little he feels any attraction to her, despite her being considered as one of the most beautiful beings in the world, the epitome of femininity. But you know Doom, he likes what he likes, and even then he probably won't treat who he likes great, and is likely just using them for some other gains. Still, Doom and Enchantress ended up getting married on the alternate Earth 9811, where everyone remained stranded on Battleworld, and even had a son together there. However, not even them having a son together or being wed could save Enchantress, as Doom still murdered her and evaded his son's attempt to kill him using magic he had learned from his dead wife. Wow, that is all kinds of messed up. And before we move on to this next point, just a quick reminder to give this video a thumbs up if you are enjoying it, and if you just want even more weird romance in your life. Who doesn't want more weird romance in their life, am I right? Number 8. Sue Storm. This one isn't that weird once we delve into what really prompts Doom to seek a relationship with women, but it is weird because of basically all of those reasons. Meaning, it might not seem weird to Victor that he has a certain attraction to Sue, but it's definitely weird in general. Some have speculated that Doom simply wants to offer Sue Storm more, like Reed's other rival for Sue's affections, Namor the Submariner. But it's more likely that Doom only wants Sue because of the power that she represents, and because he knows how much it would destroy Reed Richards. Still, overall, Doom has a pretty weird relationship and complex feelings, it seems, at times for both the Invisible Woman and the rest of the Fantastic Four family besides. Let's also just talk about how awkward it was when God Emperor Doom made Susan his wife when he created a new world out of the tattered pieces of the multiverse following the incursions, cause there's always that to go back to. And he also made her 2 kids his kids, even though they definitely still looked just like her kids with Reed. What's happening there? Number 7. Elizabeth Tyne. Elizabeth Tyne was initially introduced by the name Janine Godby, which was an alias that she assumed to escape her past. The weird thing about this relationship wasn't so much how it unfolded, though being in a relationship with any clone of a superhero is always going to be weird, but more in how it started, and in Elizabeth's resemblance to another major love interest from Spider-Man comics, Mary Jane Watson. I specifically just want to focus on the weird interactions in the beginning of this relationship though, although it is weird that, Ben Reilly's a clone and then Janine/Elizabeth just happens to resemble Mary Jane. That's pretty weird. Ben Reilly approached Janine initially, and upon their first meeting was taken with her, asking her out in the most bizarre and kind of strangely movie-esque way. He's like, look, I know this is going to sound like a line, but well, I'm new in town. I know that's lame, but I swear it's true. It's just lame that you're using it as a line, Ben. So I'm new in town, and well, I was wondering if maybe we could have, I don't know, dinner tonight? And initially Janine just turns him down, and I think we can see why from that thing that he just said, which is a lot. I feel like Ben also got Peter's awkward charm as well in the cloning process. However, because it is charm, even though it is awkward, Janine immediately changes her mind because, yeah, awkward charm. Ben never makes it to their date, however, because hero stuff, but does run into Janine and apologizes and asks if they can try again. Now, she initially says no once more, and I actually love this like one series of panels so much. I wish that they had just left it there because it's really funny, but she actually adds like right after that he can take her to lunch right now. How spontaneous and romantic and kind of presumptuous, but okay. I also like that he's just like, alright, great, I wasn't doing anything. It's like, that were me, I'd probably be like, well, maybe not now, but like maybe in a bit. Number 6. Storm. Again! I know, you're like, wait, didn't we just talk about this? But no, this is different. This one happened in an alternate reality in the Marvel book X-Men / Doctor Doom and the Chaos Engine trilogy, or sometimes referred to as the Cosmic Cube trilogy, on the alternate Earth of 892. Doctor Doom here makes Storm his wife and his co-ruler. She becomes the Empress, whether or not she wants that. They have 2 children together, and we also learn of how intensely creepily protective Doom is of his bride when a guard accidentally witnesses Storm changing, and as punishment, Doom has his eyes gouged out. The strangest thing about this one for me is the first book in the Chaos Engine series came out in 2000, whereas Storm was encased in chrome during her weird kidnapping date thing with Doom in 1981 in issue 145 of X-Men, implying to me that Stephen A. Roman, who wrote the Chaos Engine trilogy, may have actually been inspired by that strange dinner date to have Doom forcefully marry Storm in this book. Number 5. Venom and Lee Price. Lee Price really messed up Venom. Their relationship was weird in the worst of ways. Venom bonded to Lee when it was desperate for a host, but Lee ended up taking control of the symbiote and using it to do all kinds of terrible things and kill people. Not that the symbiote hadn't killed people before, I mean it had, but the huge difference here was this was very much against Venom's will, and Price would often use it to target people regardless of their alignment, which Venom has always been conflicted about, while with Eddie it was against hurting innocents for the most part. But Lee didn't care about what Venom wanted or its feelings. Basically, this relationship between Price and Venom, while not inherently romantic explicitly, was meant to symbolize the most toxic kind of romantic relationship. An abusive one. Number 4. Shalabal. Okay, I couldn't put this one in the top spot because it wasn't real. Just one of Doom's many ploys to trick others into helping him in a plot to destroy his arch nemesis, the team known as the Fantastic Four. Here, Dr. Doom pretended to marry Shalabal and pretended that he had wiped her memories of the Silver Surfer, when the Surfer ultimately found out after crash landing in Latveria and seeing posters celebrating the reign of their new queen, Doom's new bride, who in reality was not the real Shalabal, but an imposter created to resemble Silver Surfer's aka Norrinrad's long lost love. There are so many questions I have in regards to how Dr. Doom was able to pull this plan off, but hey, it's a comic and it's Dr. Doom, so I'm just willing to let any queries go unanswered here and just accept that this worked. Even with this not being the real deal Shalabal, the fact that Dr. Doom created this whole ploy and relationship just to destroy the Fantastic Four is pretty bizarre and intense, and it's also part of the reason why I think so many of us fans love him. Number 3. Louise Kennedy. The story of Louise Kennedy comes with a pretty powerful moral. Never date Kane Parker. Louise was a cop in Salt Lake City who had turned dirty and was on the criminal drug lord Vincent Tannen's payroll. She and Kane shared a night of passion, and both had feelings for the other. Both became this light in the darkness for one another, this hope that they could be redeemed or saved or become better. After Kane found out about Louise's betrayal, however, he ended up being forced to confront her and eventually killed her as a result. After snapping her neck, he left his mark on her, burning her face with the mark of Kane, shocking Ben Reilly, who was actually there to witness all of this, and whom he'd actually saved in killing Louise. It's a very terrible end to a relationship. Let me just burn your face after you're already dead. Number 2. Sandy Bidwell. Who is Sandy Bidwell? Well, she is a woman that Doom very well severely messed up when he was in college. Doom tells us about what happened with Sandy, although he himself doesn't recall her name, in Ed Brubaker's Books of Doom. He remembers being inebriated and an attractive woman coming on to him as he bragged about Latveria and his promising future while on campus. She kissed him, pushing him up against a tree, but when he looked into her eyes, he didn't like the emptiness that he saw in them, which ignited something in him, a fury and anger, and he started to strangle her, attacking Sandy. We later find out that she tried to report Victor, but his military connections handled it, working with the school administration and the government to cover it up, hide it, and force Sandy out of school, paying off her family. Of course, Victor didn't know any of this, but still, what was that? That was terrible. Number 1. Valeria. This was a pretty sweet romance initially. Valeria was Doom's first love, and they both really did love one another. But in the end, Doom's ambition got in the way of their romance. Years later, Doom actually tracked Valeria down, confessing how much he still loved her and how much she meant to him, before we realized what he was really doing. Valeria meant so much to him that she made a fitting price for what Doom really wanted: some sweet, sweet enchanted armor. Comic readers watched on in horror as Valeria was transformed into Doom's armor, her skin peeling away, her soul doomed, but at least she'd always be by his side. Jeez, remind me to never fall in love with Dr. Doom. Number 10. Venom and Clint Barton. Things get pretty weirdly kinky with these two characters in the New Avengers Annual issue number 3 from 2009. Here we see what happens to Clint after he goes after Norman Osborn's Dark Avengers. He is being held as a prisoner and is being interrogated. I don't know if we'd call this so much a romance as a weird, sexy monster moment, but it's definitely notable enough to receive a mention. Here Venom is bonded with Matt Gargan, Hawkeye is naked, and Venom is seen licking him from behind and very loosely and suggestively choking him, while Norman asks him where the other true Avengers are hiding out. It's all very sensual in a way that is odd and to me definitely implies Venom or Mac or some combination basically consider Hawkeye to be a hottie. That's how it's made to look anyways. I can't blame them though, I feel like Clint Barton is definitely a hottie, so yeah. Number 9. Flash Thompson and Valkyrie. This was a relationship that happened during the Secret Avengers when Flash Thompson as Agent Venom was on the team. I know I said I'd be focusing on Eddie Brock and Venom relationships, but this one also technically involves Venom through Flash and is too weird for me to just not include. Also, Flash was Agent Venom for quite a while in the comics, so I feel like we can just definitely count him in. This relationship was more strange because it was just so out of the blue. I don't have anything against it, but even Valkyrie Brunhilde acknowledged the awkwardness and decided to take matters into her own hands by basically jumping Flash Thompson's bones. It was a strange, secret relationship, but I guess what do you expect on the Secret Avengers? Seems oddly fitting, if not a bit abrupt. Alright friends, before we move on to that next point, it's that part of the video where I do the YouTube thing and I say, hey, click this like cause it helps us. But seriously, click this like cause it helps us. Number 8. Venom and Mary Jane. Another strange romance for sure. Venom basically left MJ traumatized when the two first met, to the point that she was terrified of them and has had various disturbing experiences with them throughout her history. And yet, this is comics, and histories are long, so pretty much anyone can end up with anyone. Also, this is MJ, and I feel like everyone just wants to ship her with everyone because, I mean, MJ's a hottie, so yeah. These two haven't gotten romantic in the traditional sense, but there have been a few moments where Venom has seemingly pined for Mary Jane, resenting the fact that Eddie always seems to get the girl, despite the fact that he is usually the one messing up those relationships. Which is very strange, especially considering how much Venom seems to pine for Eddie, but anyways. Once again, Venom is definitely a jealous creature by nature, which we've seen time and time again in the comics. We have also seen the symbiote bond with Mary Jane, much to her own chagrin, and despite the likely conflicted feelings of MJ fans at this happening. But yeah, it's a weird and problematic thing, and it's there. So let's just acknowledge it. Storm. How bad is it that Storm isn't even one of the weirdest entries on this list? And her relationship, or date at least, with Doom was pretty weird. Date, kidnapping, It's kind of both. It all went down after Storm was kidnapped by Doom and held prisoner but treated as a guest. He wined and dined Storm, and she was even beginning to think she might be attracted to him. But then he made a terrible move and he messed it all up by encasing her in chrome. Don't do that on a date, that's a bad move. This set off Storm's intense claustrophobia, which she had ever since she was little and found herself trapped under wreckage. Storm reacts by creating a massive storm, one that's implied has the potential or already has overtaken the entire planet, putting her on a level of power that is compared to the Phoenix. Doom might think he's a brilliant charmer who can do as he pleases, but he should probably think twice before he messes with Storm. Number 6. Venom and Spider-Man. One of the greatest unrequited love stories of all time. Poor Venom just wanted to bond with Spider-Man, but Spider-Man was having none of it. This was truly a rough time for the symbiote, who just was getting rejected left, right, and center until he fell into the lap of Eddie Brock, who seemed to also share his hatred for Spider-Man, and the two basically encouraged a sense of hate and kind of rage in one another initially because of this negative experience that Venom had originally with Peter Parker. If you don't believe me that this was a romance of sorts, just look at the name of the issue where the two kind of break up more permanently in Web of Spider-Man. The name of the story where the suit attempts to once more bond to Peter unsuccessfully, who shakes it off with the sonic disruptance of some loud bells ringing, is called Till Death Do Us Part. Sounds pretty romantic to me. Definitely some strange, sad, and unrequited love there. Poor Venom, they're always being rejected by Spider-Man, continuously. Number 5. Deborah Whitman. This is an interesting relationship considering it was very one-sided. Deborah Whitman was a secretary at Empire State University, where Peter was a student. She pined after Peter, and although at times it seemed like Peter didn't even notice her existence, the two started dating. Needless to say, they didn't make for a great partnership due to the fact that Peter kept having to bail on their dates to attend to heroic business as Spider-Man, but didn't really want to confide in Deborah, so he just gave her a ton of really lame excuses. Eventually, the two broke up, but Deborah remained obsessed with him and began to fantasize and hallucinate that he was Spider-Man, in essence making the ultimate excuse for his behavior while also idolizing him. When her therapist approached Peter after learning of this and asked him to wear a Spider-Man suit to help shock her out of her fantasy, he refused to do so, which obviously the therapist was like, well, that's weird, but okay. Deborah, becoming delusional, later ended up in a toxic relationship as a result of all of this, making excuses for her then husband. Fortunately, Peter did eventually confess to her that he was Spider-Man, which helped Deborah to move forward and woke her to the truth of her current relationship, motivating her to get a divorce. Thank goodness. Still pretty crazy. Number 4. Venom and Beck Underwood. This one was pretty weird because Beck seemed to be super into it at first. Well, I mean, for a time anyways. Like most people, she ended up ultimately being turned off by the whole combo deal of Venom and Eddie Brock together. In the end, the whole dating of both the symbiote and Eddie ended up just being too much for her. It got pretty strange too when Beck asked Eddie about his relationship with the suit and wanted to make sure it was healthy. One of the things that I actually didn't really like about her was how she got kind of a bit judgy when she felt the need to seek clarity on if Eddie was really enamored with Venom because he just hadn't found an adequate and committed woman to settle down with. Let Eddie love his alien suit, I say. Just let it happen. But I totally understand that it can be a lot for someone to get involved with both Eddie Brock and, you know, the alien that is Venom. That's a lot. In the end, the two ended up parting on amicable terms, with Beck giving both Eddie and Venom one last kiss and hug. And Venom was also super heartbroken about it. They were like, no, please don't leave us. Number 3. AMARA PERERA. AMARA PERERA was a brilliant doctor who ended up discovering a cure for the mutant gene, but one that she dared not produce, knowing what kind of unrest and political and sociological warfare it would likely create. She dated Tony Stark briefly before he faked his own death. When he returned, she was no longer interested, feeling he had betrayed her by letting her think he was dead when he was not, which I mean, fair enough. She then ended up becoming a reluctant ally, confidant, friend, and implied lover to Dr. Doom during the events of the infamous Iron Man series, where Victor Von Doom took up the mantle of Iron Man during Tony's absence. At the end of that series, it was revealed that AMARA was pregnant, although it was later briefly mentioned by Dr. Doom that their unborn child did not make it to term and thus was never born. I love when other writers do that. They just come in and they're like, this never happened, it's fine. Don't worry about it. While this relationship actually felt pretty authentic, it was definitely still odd and random. But it also happened at a pretty strange and unique time in Victor's life, so yeah, I guess okay. Number 2. Eddie Brock and Anne Wang. And Venom? This relationship basically got super weird in a bad way for Anne when Venom got involved. Anne and Eddie were originally married, but after Eddie lost his dad and his job, Anne couldn't take sort of the dark path that he was headed down and left him. This of course only put Eddie in an even darker place, and then he found the Venom symbiote. Together, their combined hatred for Spider-Man turned them into a villain, but Eddie still longed for Anne and wanted to make things right. They kind of ended up back together for a bit, but this also made things worse for Anne, who was left traumatized and feeling violated after bonding with Venom herself. She didn't like the person that she and the symbiote were together, Venom, nor what it did to Eddie. And it was all this trauma that actually caused Anne to be unable to leave her apartment for months, and later resulted in her taking her own life after Eddie and Venom confronted her once more and were super clueless when it came to just how fragile Anne's emotional and mental state was at the time. Because Spider-Man was also present at the time and also freaking Anne out though, Eddie of course continued to blame him for his problems and for the death of his ex-wife. Number 1. Symbrock. This is really the love story for the ages, but is also one of the strangest ones out there. Eddie falling in love with a symbiotic alien suit who it turns out is its own living entity, and vice versa. This is confirmed in the comics as the two have expressed their love for one another and even at times bickered like a married couple. They also call each other things like love and dear, so yeah, that's pretty coupley in my opinion. Not only that, but Eddie has helped Venom deliver children, even though those children are technically kinda just Venom's who reproduces asexually. But still, Venom considered Eddie to basically be the father of their children, so yeah. And also, Eddie helped the symbiote to deliver, in essence, their symbiote child together, Sleeper, bonding with Venom while it was in essence giving birth. This labor was a hard one, and Eddie bonded with Venom to help it through and to help stabilize his partner, not just in this labor, but also in heroics, crime, and in a way, love. Aside from this moment, we have seen tons of other moments where the pair chose to be together and support one another in a pretty intimate way. At the end of the day, these two together are one of the weirdest and sweetest romances on this list.